really need some water right now, actually. I said that we were good to go live, and now I'm
You want to
just
grab
like,
that?
okay. But yeah, okay, sweet. We're live in all the places. Welcome, everyone. If you're watching live, if you're watching the replay, welcome to the show. And thanks for joining us for another live episode. I'll be monitoring the comments. So if you have any questions I was going to say for myself or Mallory, but I don't think they'd have any questions for me.
They might. Don't cut yourself short. They might
Yeah,
have
they
some
might. Yeah.
questions.
If you do have any questions for me, share them in the comments in the chat. If you have any questions for Mallory, drop those in the chat as well. And I'll bring those in whenever it makes sense in our conversation. So if I don't get to it right away, just know I still see it, most likely, unless I'm distracted. Um, but yeah, I'm excited. This is going to be a fun topic. And okay, sweet. Let's we can go ahead and get into the podcast.
All right.
I feel like we've done all the formalities. Um, but yeah, well, Mallory, welcome to the show. Welcome to the podcast. I'm excited for this conversation. Excited to have you here.
It's good to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. This is you know a lot of the topics, a lot of the guests that are on the show are entrepreneurs and talking a lot of like business and stuff. But I love to bring in not so much like quintessential business topics like how to market your business and that kind of stuff, which is helpful, but I feel like there's a lot of other things that go into your business that aren't
Mhm.
just like numbers and all
Yeah.
that. So I'm very excited to talk about um, neurodivergence and neurotypical and like what all that means for some of the listeners. They may have seen the title and just been like, I don't know what this is, but I'm going I'm gonna join and I'm gonna learn about it. I feel like anyone who is neurodivergent is like, oh, I know exactly what this is. This is gonna be so good.
100%.
um,
Yeah.
but
Or is anyone
but
on TikTok? I feel like most of the time people are like, well, I found that term on TikTok and that's how I learned what it means, which is so cool.
Okay, cool. That was one of the things I was wanting to ask you, because I have found a lot on TikTok about neurodivergence and ADHD and autism and like
Mhm.
and different things and like the symptoms of that. How do you fall on that as a professional? How
Yeah.
do you fall on that, like with just random people being like, hey, so my therapist said this, and now you should do this uh,
Yeah.
on TikTok?
I mean, it's a really good question. And you're gonna get a different answer probably from like a variety of, therapists and professionals. But I
Hmm.
tend to lean on the side of it's a really cool tool.
Okay.
Like there are so many people who will come into therapy and they're coming into therapy for something completely different. And I will kind of notice these certain things in them where I'm like, okay, this is something that's about in the back of my mind. We'll get there eventually if it feels relevant. But a lot of the time, even having that word or that label is not even so much what they really need, so much as the like
Hmm.
affirmation that what they're experiencing is like okay. And that it's okay to leave it. It's also okay if they want to, make some adjustments to things. So that's the cool thing to me about social media and coming across this stuff there is like, wow, people will learn a lot about themselves, sometimes bring it to me. I haven't even brought it up yet. And they're like, hey, I saw this thing on
Hmm.
TikTok. Like, can we talk about it? Which I think is really cool. I think we have to be careful, just like with everything.
Right.
In the like, to really kind of dive in, I guess, there, like the neurodiversity affirming like care space, like self identification is valid, is seen as valid, that it's not hurting anyone if you align with these certain symptoms, these certain lived
Hmm.
experiences, and you want to make adjustments to your life. Fantastic. Like that's that's not going to hurt much. I think sometimes we can get into some murky waters with some other stuff of like self-diagnosing on some pieces of it, but in a lot of ways I really do think that there's so much we're learning about neurodivergence so quickly, and a lot of it is also because people are like sharing their lived experience on the internet, and we're learning so much more because what we knew before was from like these really small, like sample sizes, and that's
Right.
like how we came up with certain like diagnostic criteria. So
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, cool. I think that's a great answer. And also I say that's a great answer, and I was about to be like, and that's what I think too. Of course, I'd say it's a great answer, but yeah, no, I think that's great. That's how I feel. I know, like, I don't want to take advice from just like anyone
Yep.
in, like Michigan, who's just like, hey, so my therapist said this, so now you should do this. I'm like, oh, okay, I'm going to do that. But yeah, like you were saying, like seeing those symptoms and like different things in your life that you're like, oh, that could be why it's so
Hmm.
difficult for me to do this task. And
Yep.
let me try the hack or whatever that they're saying on TikTok, and see if that works for me. And
Yeah.
that has been something that's like getting rid of clutter and like organizing, like our fridge. We have like these organizers now because someone on TikTok was like, this helps my
Yeah.
ADHD brain to
They're
not
clear
let,
and you can like
yeah,
see through them.
you can, yeah. And we don't have like the produce in the little crisper
Hmm.
shelves. We have them in the
You're
door
gonna forget about
because,
it. Yeah, it's
exactly,
gonna
yeah.
get
And
gross.
that
Yep.
has kept us from, having carrots go bad so quickly. And we're just like, oh no, the carrots are right here. We can cook that with dinner. So yeah, I love that. Before we get into like the full on topic and everything, there's something that I like to do where I've got a list of questions, and 1 through 17, I got 17 different questions. I'm just gonna have you pick two numbers between 1 and 17. A lot of these are stolen from Stephen Colbert with his Colbert
Yeah.
questionnaire, but yeah, it's just like a fun way to kind of get to know Mallory, get to know you before kind of diving into uh,
I
the
love it.
topic. So, what numbers do you have for me?
2
Okay.
and 14.
Okay. Okay. Number two, what's one thing that you own that you should really throw out?
My gosh, I still have a shirt from art class of first grade that was supposed to be really oversized back then, and this thing
Right.
is ratty, but I sleep in it all the time. I love this thing, and it has got to go. Yeah, for
You're
sure.
like,
Yeah, that yellow
I,
shirt. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. There's just some articles of clothing that I'm like very sentimental about. I'm like, but I know I need to throw this away. I know it
Yeah.
doesn't fit anymore. I know that, like, as I in high school, I wore like the like two sizes too small shirts so that it would
Mhm.
like show off my muscles that I didn't really have. And now I still have them. I'm like, these are like four sizes too small now. There's no way. Maybe I can still hold on to him. My son is 9. He will be getting into that
Yeah.
size in a few
It's gonna be
years.
so cool. He's gonna
It'll
wanna
work.
wear dad's shirts. Yeah, it's gonna be awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, this shirt literally still
So,
has like everyone had their shirt they kept in the class for like the art
mhm,
projects and stuff, and your name was in Sharpie across the front. My name is still in Sharpie across the front
that's
of
a
the shirt that I
that's
wear.
a good
So
Sharpie.
yeah, it's stuck around. It's great
Yeah.
advertising for Sharpie because it really has lasted through the years.
Yes, that's great. I love that. Okay. All right, sweet. Oh, what was your other number? That one was 2.
Oh, I don't remember, but let's go with 14.
14. Okay. 14 is what number am I thinking of?
25.
Oh, okay. Mine was 52. So you got the reverse.
Hey!
It was just mirrored when it came across telepathically.
Yeah,
It's cool.
yeah. Love it.
Okay. Well, sweet. Well, I love that. I feel like I know you a lot more now. Uh,
Mhm.
but I kind of mentioned this earlier that maybe some people don't really know the terms neurodivergent, neurodiverse, neurotypical. Could you give us a
Mhm.
little breakdown of like the
Yeah,
differences there and what that means?
absolutely. I love you even asking the question because, again, one of those things we come across on TikTok. I've had most people come in and they understand it. Other people that come in and they're like, "This is what it means," and I'm like, "Okay, I don't know where you found that," but um, so we can kind of start with. I like to start with the term neurodivergent. So why that term came about is really kind of as a response to try and not have this like pathological word that we use for these different, basically like lived experiences. So, what it
Mhm.
really means to be neurodivergent is that you have a brain that functions, operates differently than someone else's, and that can show up in a ton of different ways. But it's just to say it's just different. It's divergent from the norm, divergent from like what we would view as like typical. And that can also be viewed differently depending on the culture or like the community that we're talking about. When it comes to like that experience of what that is. But from that, there's kind of these different like diagnoses or labels that would fall under neurodivergent.
Okay.
Um, but really, that term comes from that place of like wanting to just give like another word other than just like some pathological term that doesn't feel great to everybody. And then
Yeah.
neurodiversity is really just the idea that there are like all brains are good brains, neurodiversity affirming, like every brain, it might function differently, might have different needs, but they're all good, they're all fine instead of different being bad.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that because that I grew up in the 90s, which was not a great time to be neurodivergent. It
No.
was definitely frowned upon and also just ignored. Um
Hmm.
and and yeah, like growing up, that was it was a bad thing. It was like
Hmm.
if you had ADD, if you had uh, any sort of neurodivergent, just like I mean, I didn't even know that it was something different about your brain. I was just like, oh, it's just like
Mm-mm.
a behavioral problem. Is
Right, it's
pretty
just
much
I'm
what I
not,
was told.
yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
you're not
choosing
paying
not to
attention.
listen. Right.
Exactly. Yeah, and that whole thing, it was just very is seen as a very negative thing, a very like, why can't you be like this person who can
Hmm.
sit down and focus, do their work, and I love that that is not the norm anymore. That's not
Hmm.
how we're speaking about it for the most part. At least in the circles that
Right.
I run in, it
Yeah.
seems like things are
Yeah.
changing. Um, just the way that we're speaking about it is different now.
Yeah, trying to move away from it. There's still so many places where that is the norm,
Yeah.
to kind of pathologize it or to make it seem like it's a, really shaming, honestly, of like, well, it's a problem with you,
Hmm.
child or even adult that like you can't fall in line. And yeah, so I love that it's shifting so much and we're constantly learning more, which is also really cool. Um, but it takes so much time for like what we're learning based on science, but also what we're learning based on lived experience to get that translated into like general practice and care in schools and in
Right.
workplaces and in therapy. So yeah, long process, but we are getting there, which is really exciting.
Yeah, yeah, that is exciting. Because, like you were saying, we had like small case studies before of like few
Right.
people, and now we're getting a lot more, which is kind of speeding that up. And then also the education of the people who, some probably still teaching from 30 years ago, where
Mhm.
they were in that one mindset of like, well, this is a behavioral problem, you're not listening. And now learning what neurodivergence actually is. Uh, I think that's great that we're moving. We should always be moving forward and changing
Mhm.
as a society.
I
Um,
agree. Yeah.
well, like as the society, we still have like systems in place, and we still have different things in our culture that are kind of set up more for neurotypicals. What are some things that you have seen that are more designed for neurotypical people?
Yeah, man. My joke is always everything, like
Yeah.
just about everything seems to
Yeah.
be. And the more that we learn, the more, it is changing a little bit, but it still feels like such an uphill battle in most of these places to be, more clear. Schools, definitely like public school system, in a big
Mhm.
way, corporate workplaces and like expectations and how you're supposed to interact and all of that stuff is very much lent towards the um, neurotypical brain. Um, Societal expectations with how we talk to one another, how we interact, things that we're expected to go to and attend, like a lot of that, like expectations. That's not like a system in place by the government, but it is something
Right.
that's you just kind of know, right? Like, okay, well, I'm supposed to do this, so this is what I do.
Hmm.
I'm supposed to make eye contact and shake someone's hand when I meet them for the first time.
Right.
Stuff like that, where it's like that actually might make my skin crawl on the inside, but it's what I'm supposed to do. So I'm going to push through because everyone else can do it or is supposed to do it, kind of thing.
Oh yeah, that feels like that is one of the things for me that just it feels so weird. Like
Mhm.
holding eye contact while I'm shaking hands. Because
Yeah.
one, I don't have the best hand-eye coordination, so I remember as a child being told, like, "Well, you need a, firm handshake, look them in the eye," and I would just,
Mhm.
like, hit their elbow or something, just
Right.
trying to, like, maintain that eye contact. I'm like, "This is not for me. I'm gonna look at your hand, shake, and then I'll look up."
Yep.
But yeah, like,
Yep.
that is definitely something that has been an issue for me of just like that, like you said, like kind of like that skin crawling feeling of
Mhm.
uh, just like looking someone in the eye for an extended period of time,
Yeah.
especially
Yeah.
like in a conversation. I'm like, I have to like look off and then
Right.
come back to
Right.
you. I
Yeah.
can't just
Yes.
like continue staring
Yeah.
straight ahead. I
Yep.
also feel like a robot if I'm just staring straight ahead at you.
Yes. Well, and what that does is like now I'm trying to follow what's socially expected.
Uh-huh.
But I am so caught up with what's happening in my own head, right? Of like, am I making the right amount of eye contact? Am I making, is
Hmm.
this the right, it was my handshake the right, am I saying the right words? Is my
Yeah.
whatever? And so now I'm not thinking about you. I'm not thinking about like attending to this conversation. I'm like totally caught up in my head. And so
Yeah.
I get why that was established, like the idea that that's going to help you interact with people. But man, it like can be the very opposite. It can make it so much worse. And then now you're like scared to socialize with people,
Oh,
So
100%.
yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, I would
Yeah.
get halfway into a conversation and then just be like, "Do I need to switch which eye I'm looking at? Because I've been looking at their right eye. Can they tell I'm looking at their right eye?"
Yeah.
And I'm just
Their nose is starting to look funny
completely
to me.
right. Yeah. I'm like completely missing everything that they're talking about. I'm just like, yeah, yeah, yeah. No left eye now. Okay. And yeah, it's kind of silly, like these cultural things that we're supposed to do and how much bandwidth we give them in our own minds of like, am I holding myself in this proper way? Am I aligning with what culture thinks that I should look like and should do, but then that's completely taking you out of your experiences.
Yeah. Yeah, it does the very opposite.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so with these with these different systems that are kind of set up for neurotypicals, what are some ways that we can navigate those um, as like with a neurodivergent brain?
Yeah, man, I could really dive in here for about 10 hours, so I won't do that to you or
Cool,
anyone
we've
listening.
got
But
time. We're good. This is going to be an
but
11-part series.
yeah, so stay tuned, everybody. You're gonna hear my voice for the next 5 months.
Hmm.
Yeah, I if I was gonna kind of choose one and thinking of kind of like, the listeners that might be here, I thought about kind of diving into like workplace.
Yeah,
And that one is so cool that this is, a podcast specific to like entrepreneurs and creatives because that is really where a lot of neurodivergent, not all of them, will thrive, is where they have that space to make it what they need it to be. I love that,
yeah,
you've clearly done that like for yourself. And again, not all of them. We kind of have this phrase in this world of, you've met one neurodivergent brain is one neurodivergent brain. Like they can be completely different, have completely different needs.
oh yeah,
So some of them would really thrive in corporate, right? Like the structure of that and the expectations of that. But that's one where I think I work a lot with people to try and like find a way to make this like work well for them, whatever they've found. A lot of them they end up finding like maybe they work best in a smaller work environment, but if they work for themselves, it's a nightmare because they need some sort of external structure. If they have to do that themselves, it's like, or they need a virtual assistant, or um, they find that they work better for a boss who has certain characteristics. They need a certain
mhm,
sensory environment. Like there's just so much that you can kind of adapt in there. And it really does require you kind of to stop and pause and tune into what you need before you can really adjust any of that to kind of identify like what's working, what's not working. Thinking of entrepreneurs specifically, like my client base? Like, are these the kind
Yeah.
of people that work well with my schedule or, how I work, that kind of stuff.
Hmm. Yeah. I love what you said there about like taking a look in, like inward of like, what do you need? And,
Mhm.
a big thing, as you were talking about that, like not, some people don't thrive in the entrepreneur, work for yourself life and really thrive under having someone, a supervisor, manager saying like, all right, this is what you need to do today, or these are your goals or whatever. And like doing that, clocking in at 9, clocking out at 5, leaving work alone and all of that. And
Mhm.
that has never been me. I have always like, I mean, I started my first business in high school and always dreamed of working for myself and never had that idea of like, I don't know, I'd be good working. I mean, I guess I did have, I got in the whole corporate thing right out of college and was like,
Okay.
well, I guess this is what I'm going to do for the next 30 years.
Yeah.
Um,
And your
but
soul slowly felt like it was
yes,
dying.
yeah, and I was slowly being crushed.
Yeah.
But like it was something that I had to learn, that not everyone had that same drive, that same mindset of like, I want to work for myself.
Mhm.
And after getting married, my wife had, I forget what which one of her hobbies it was, that I was just like, oh, we could turn this into a business and I can create a web page for you and we can start marketing on Etsy. And she was like, I just want to do this as a hobby. Like, I don't want
Just
this
let
to
me
be
knit, man.
work. Yeah, yeah. Like, I just want to cross stitch some stuff,
Yeah.
with some funny sayings, and then just give them to our friends. That's all I want to do. This is just like a mindless task that I can do while watching TV or chilling with the kids.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
that kind of like, it was an aha moment for me of like, oh, not everyone wants to build their own
Mhm.
business. Like,
Mhm.
she absolutely thrives at her job and is doing great and her boss loves her and all of that. And I'm like, okay, this is a great place for her, and
Yeah.
that would not be a great place for me. And
Mhm.
we have talked many times. She was like, I could absolutely not run a photography business and manage other people and, bring in work and have to market and all of that. And like, I think that has been one of the greatest things, for me, is, um, talking to other people and just like getting to
Mhm.
see that we're all so different. Like you said, there's like, every neurodivergent brain is a different brain.
Mhm.
That it's
Mhm.
not just like, oh, you've been, diagnosed with autism. Okay, then you're all in the same.
Right.
You're all exactly the same,
Right.
but that everything is different. And I think that is
Mhm.
a great thing to keep in mind as you're just moving through life.
Yeah. Yeah. It is, and it's, like, helpful in a lot of ways. You even mentioned, thinking about, like, if you are the boss in a workplace too, or you are
Mhm.
running a business and you have people working for you, like, we kind of talked a little bit more about what it's like when you're the person working for someone else or working for yourself. But when you're working for someone else too, like, that's a whole thing as well. Maybe they're neurotypical and so they don't get it, or
Right.
maybe you're neurotypical and they're neurodivergent and you're having a hard time like understanding where they're coming from. So it's nice to kind of be able to take that beat and that pause of like, there may be other reasons why they're thinking this way and not quite jump to like an assumption of why, or whatever. But yeah,
Mhm.
it can make a big difference if people are aware of that and then can make space for it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a great point, because I know that not everyone listening to this, um, is, neurodivergent. There's a lot of neurotypicals out
Okay.
there that run their own businesses and listen to this podcast. And, I have no idea where I land on on this spectrum. I've never been like clinically diagnosed or anything. Um, I should, though. I've been talking about, going to therapy for years and just have never
Mm,
taken the time to do that. It is a difficult thing for me uh, to put myself first. Um,
yeah.
but but yeah, it's something that like, I might be neurotypical, but it's something that I'm very interested in, because,
Mm,
kind of like we were talking about, like the TikTok things of
Right.
The clear organizers for your fridge. That's still very helpful for me. Even if I am
Great.
neurotypical, that's still very helpful
Hmm.
for me to be able to see everything quickly and to have like, oh, all the cheeses go in this one over here. So we're not going to have
Yeah.
like Parmesan up here and then we got cheddar
Right.
down over here. It's like, I know where
Hmm.
everything is. I know where the kids'
Hmm.
snacks are, and all of that. And it's just it's helpful all around. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, okay. So what are some other things that we can do, kind of navigating these systems, or ways that we can maybe
Hmm.
even implement those into just
Yeah.
like day life, work life?
Hmm. Again, there's just so many things that come to mind. But if I was going to pick a couple,
Hmm.
a big one is oftentimes schedule. Like, am I, and here's where it comes in of like whether you're neurotypical or neurodivergent, pay attention to this. But it's, am I more of like a early bird or am I more of like a night owl? And can I make my work day flow like that? Like I am married to someone. I mean, he can work. He comes alive at 11 p.m. I cannot, barely can function past about 9:30. Don't ask my
Yeah.
brain to do anything productive past like 9:30 p.m. But he will come alive and can stay awake until 3 a.m. And that's when he like gets the most stuff done. He's so productive. You know, the house is quiet, like that whole thing. So we've kind of structured our lives that way, where he can do that.
Hmm.
Um,
It is
but
funny that y'all like found each other, because that's typically what
mhm,
happens, is like the
right.
early bird and the night owl end up partnering, and then it's just like,
Yeah.
okay, we can't do this together
Yeah.
all day every day. And yeah, my
Uh-uh.
wife and I are
No.
also the same, where
It's so
um
funny.
yeah, it's very
Works
interesting.
out well raising kids because it's like, okay, then I can get up and, you're available or
Hmm.
whatever. But
Yeah.
part of that, it was like, I just don't see you. Like, is this really working? But it has. It's worked out great. But that's a good example of like, look at your schedule, whether you're working, you're living with a partner or not. Like, um when are you most productive, but also when do you enjoy
Hmm.
the day the most? Like I am an early bird, but I've also learned like if I can start my day, I don't start most of my days before 10 a.m because I love mornings. So I like
Yeah.
enjoy my morning. I hang out with my kid and we have breakfast and we go on walks and whatever. And like I love, and then I get started. Most of my clients don't really want to see me and talk about their feelings prior to 10 a.m. anyway.
Right. Yeah.
Um, which I
Like,
get.
I still need 3 more cups of coffee before I can open
Yeah.
up to you. I'm sorry.
Yeah. If any of them have ever tried to do like an 8 or 9 a.m. session, they're like, okay, so then she
Yeah.
said, and I'm like, right,
Uh-huh.
okay, maybe we maybe we don't do 9 a.m. again.
No.
Um, so yeah, scheduling's a big thing. Looking at like systems that you need in place, especially as an entrepreneur, someone who's running your own business, like you have a lot of irons in the fire usually if you're doing most of that, if not all of that by yourself. So like finding different things, using Asana or Notion or like whatever the, like system might be
Mhm.
that helps you keep organized with like different tasks and stuff. Cause it's like, I want to give you lots and lots of space to not like shame yourself if you don't get stuff done. And at the end of the day, if you're relying on your business to like put food on the table, we also have to get some things done. And so like how do we find a spot that like meets in the middle of that like accountability with also that like self-compassion and that freedom. um so scheduling is a big part of that, productivity is a big part of that, email, like communication, what strategies do you have for your inbox so that it's not just like a free-for-all in there,
Yeah.
where you can kind of keep things organized, kind of some ideas there.
Yeah. Keep it organized, and also the boundaries of like not jumping in your inbox at 11 p.m. because you're like,
Yeah.
"Oh, I saw this email come in and I need to get back." It's like setting those boundaries of office hours, and also
Hmm.
letting your clients know like, these are my office hours. And every now and then, sure, like if it's an emergency or something, like I really do need to get back to this.
Yeah.
Or if I've got one of those 11 p.m., I've got a fire lit underneath me and I'm just ready to work, like I'll answer a bunch of emails and then I'll just hit schedule for 8 a.m.
Schedule
and
send. Oh, she's a
schedule
best
send.
friend. Yeah.
So
Uh-huh.
good. Because then
Yeah.
you can work whenever you want to, and it still looks like you're working in office hours. So people aren't going to be like, well, I received that email from you at,
Right.
12:15 the other night. So you should be up. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
but uh, but yeah, you mentioned something and I pinned it in my head and then it fell off the wall. I don't remember what it was now, but I was like, oh, I need to bring this back. Um, If it comes back,
Yeah,
it'll be good.
just
But
shout it
yeah,
out.
like, yeah,
Yeah.
you had mentioned, oh, there we go, it's back. I just
Yay.
had to look around. Uh, but you had mentioned that like keeping keeping in mind, like, when do you work the best? Like, when are you
Mhm.
motivated? Because I'm the same as you. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not super motivated before 10 a.m. I do enjoy mornings, so I don't want to just like wake up at 6 and then dive straight into work at 6:30.
Mhm.
It's like, I mean, I also can't because I have to get the kids ready and dressed
Yeah.
and taken to school and all of that too. But still, like, I got home this morning 8:30 after dropping off everyone, and I made myself a nice breakfast and made some
Mhm.
coffee and sat there and,
Yeah.
scrolled a little bit and just
Yeah. It's
had
you time.
some me time, and I didn't
Yeah.
want to just like dive straight into work. And I think that's a really great thing to really assess about yourself is, when do you work the most efficiently? Because
Mhm.
for some people, it might be in the evening, and maybe you need to
Right.
structure your day that way. And some people, it may be you work really great between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m.
Mhm.
And you just like, that's your power hours, and that's
Mhm.
when you're gonna schedule all the like hard things, or like the long things that you really gotta, all the photo editing. It's just like, okay,
Yeah.
cool, I'm gonna power through this when I have that motivation.
Yep. And that's something that, a lot of people sometimes will say of like, well, I just feel like my body is shutting down at 3 p.m., but that's not working. Like, how do I get my body to wake up at 3 p.m.?
uh
And sometimes I'm like, okay, well, why do you need it to work at 3 p.m.? Is it because you actually do? Like, you have to go pick up your kids, so you like can't take a nap then? Or, or like you have to have this meeting because you work a 9 to 5? Or is it that you've just, maybe you do have a flexible schedule, but you've kind of just like been programmed to think that you have to be productive at 3 p.m. or you have to, during these certain hours, this is
mm,
what you have to do. Like, are you actually pigeonholing yourself? And then you're just in this cycle of like shaming yourself all day of like, well, I didn't, oh gosh, I like wasn't productive, at 9 a.m. when I got home from dropping off the kids. And what's wrong with me? Everyone else is productive at 9 a.m. That's when most people start their work day. Like, why can't I
right.
be like most people? What's wrong? And it just snowballs. And now it's like 2 p.m. You've got nothing done and you feel horrible about yourself versus knowing that maybe I do great in the afternoon. So if I could just give myself the freedom to live my life until 2 and start my work day then, like, does that work with my lifestyle? We have to consider that. But then too, like, can I give myself a little bit of that freedom instead of like being in this like internal monologue of like shame all day long? So it really is powerful, to kind of take that step back and look at like, what do I need and can I make that happen at all? Even give myself, an inch of space there.
Yeah, yeah, and that's interesting. Like, you know, can this work? Am I just doing this because this is what's normal? Or like, because
Hmm.
uh, my wife and I were just talking about like uh, school, and like the drop off times and pickup times, and how like that's all interwoven with like the industrial age, and how we were,
Yeah.
raising up the next industry workers and all of that. And like, is that the best for our kids?
Right.
Uh and like those
Hmm.
kind of questions. And our culture has like these set things that are not always, and actually pretty rarely, moving ahead with us. They're like stuck, and then it's like the old, well, that's the way it's always been. It's like, well, it was until someone
Yeah.
changed it, and then that became the
Yeah.
normal. um,
Hmm.
and yeah, just like assessing those things, because a lot of times as entrepreneurs, we come from a more structured like 9 to 5 job,
Right.
and then you leave your 9 to 5 to work for yourself. But then that's the only structure that is,
Right.
I need to start at 9, or like comparing yourself to someone else, like you mentioned. And that comparison is uh, a very dangerous game.
Hmm.
And really, just like, just going back to what you said earlier about just really assessing what works best for you, and then
Hmm.
structuring that for what works for you and for your lifestyle. Because with having to go pick up kids at 2 p.m., I can't start my workday at 1 when I'm
Right.
feeling, you know super energetic. It's like, okay, I've got to I've got to structure things a little bit differently because
Mhm.
of the lifestyle I'm in currently.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, what are like if there was one thing you want the listeners to take away from this whole conversation, or even if we didn't talk about it yet, what's one thing you want them to take away just from listening today and just implement into their life?
Yeah. I was thinking about it, and really, if you've been looking for permission to restructure your life or your relationships or your work setup to work for you, then like here it is. Like hear from someone else who has a license and, a master's degree in counseling. Like if that's what you need is someone else to say that permission, like please take it because you are allowed to have it, right? Like to make adjustments. And maybe that doesn't mean quitting your 9 to 5 or whatever. Maybe you can't do that yet. Or, you do have to pick up your kids at 2. But to take the permission to even make small adjustments in your day, take that time after, you get home at 9 a.m. and just kind of breathe for a little bit. Um,
Yeah.
and if something doesn't feel right to you, I guess the other thing I would say about like something in society, how it functions, like, can you take any steps to kind of push back on that a little bit? Maybe outwardly, maybe it's advocacy, but also maybe just internally, like choosing, like, okay, that's not a belief I want to run my household by, that like we have to always be productive all the
Right.
time. Maybe we build in time for rest or whatever. But really just kind of coming back to the idea of permission. Take some permission. Take some freedom for yourself to design your life in a way that works for you and not against you.
Yes, I love that. I love that permission because yeah, a lot of times we're like, well, I can't do this because,
Right.
and then yada yada yada. And it's like,
Yeah.
here's your permission. You can,
Right.
and and the permission to keep things the way that it is too. If you're
Hmm.
feeling that push to change things, and you're like, yeah, but I have little ones at home, and I really want to spend that
Yeah.
time with them. It's like this is your permission to
Yeah.
structure your life how you want it. There were seasons in my entrepreneur journey. I've been doing this for over 10 years now, and
Mhm.
there were seasons where I've been the primary parent at home and my wife has been
Yeah.
out working, and
Mhm.
I scaled back on the amount of photo shoots that I was taking because I was like, I'm going to be present with these little kids, and like I want to see them and I want to spend
Yeah.
time with them, and get down on the floor and play with the kids instead of just like, oh
Mhm.
no, I've got to go get on my laptop and work.
Yeah. Go
and
edit some
and
more
then
photos.
exactly, and there have also been seasons where I am working all the time, and I'm like, yeah, I've got my nights and I've got a couple
Mhm.
weekends a month, and that's what I have in this time to give them. So yeah, I love that giving permission, because a lot of times that is what we need, is just someone else to be like, you can do this. It's okay to do
Mhm.
that. So thank you, Mallory.
Yeah.
Thank you for
Yes.
the
Take it.
permission.
It sounds like you already had it. You've been doing that, but yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah, and man, I have loved this conversation. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Before we kind of get into like where people can find you and follow along and all of that, there's part of the show that I like to do where we talk about what we're loving this week, and it can
Mhm.
be anything from like a new TV show or a book or some food or just the weather. What is it that you're loving this week?
Yeah, I've been catching up on the most recent episodes of The Crown on Netflix. Really been loving that. I feel like I waited forever for those to come out,
Uh-huh.
and so I'm caught up now, so I can't wait for the
Nice.
for the next couple. But yeah,
Yes.
loving that.
Nice, nice. I have not watched that yet. I have heard a lot of good things,
Mhm.
and I know a lot of the actors. I don't, not personally, but I know them. Like, oh yeah, I like them and other things.
Yeah, yeah.
So I need to look into that. I've never been a big like um, royal watcher
I
type
have,
person.
yeah, me either. I've
Okay,
never watched a
okay,
wedding or a funeral, nothing, but it has had
yeah.
me hooked.
Yeah, I remember like something like 70 million people or something watched.
Yeah,
I don't even know their names. Oh, one of the most recent royal
yeah,
weddings, and I was like,
yeah.
I didn't even know it was going on. That's cool.
Yeah, people that like got up at like 2 a.m. or whatever here, and I woke up the next
Right.
morning and everyone had like had watch parties, and I was like, I didn't even know what was
Yeah.
happening. I think part of
Yeah.
why I've loved it too is because it's showing the hard parts, like the behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, or behind the scenes. I mean, it's a TV show, but
Yeah.
which has been, it because it just looks like, oh, princes and princesses and whatever, but like it
Mhm.
shows some of the like harder aspects that I would imagine of like being royal. So yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. It's not all, tea parties and,
yeah,
strolling through the garden and all of that. There's, yeah,
waving with
that,
the princess hand.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's hello everyone. But yeah, I'm gonna have to check that out. I think that'll be a good one for me to watch too.
Mm,
Okay, so I'm also catching up on a show. Uh, it's one that has just been like popping up over and over again on Hulu of like you would be interested in this. I think you would
yeah.
like this. And
Okay.
the fifth season of Fargo just came out, and I have never watched any of it. So I just
I
watched the
haven't either.
first season of Fargo. Very good. It's like a crime mystery thriller,
Ooh,
all based on true events. um, and like a disclaimer at the beginning of each one, saying like the out of respect for the victims, or the victims, the names have been changed, but in honor of them, the story is told exactly how it happened. I'm
wow.
like, it's a wild story. But yeah, it's very
Cool.
interesting. I don't know if I think it's like an anthology type deal where each
Okay.
season is a different story, because
Okay.
the cast in season 5 is very different than the cast in season
Mm,
1. So I'm sure it's like different stories.
yeah.
But yeah,
I gotta check that out.
very very
Big,
interesting.
big crime fan. So well, you said
Me
it's on
too.
Hulu?
Big fan of crime.
Yeah. Yeah. Big
Just
love for crime.
love
Yikes.
crimes. Yeah, yeah. I'm also, I love all the true crime stuff, all the
Yeah,
podcasts, the documentaries, and all those things. But yeah, it's on Hulu, and
cool.
yeah, season 1 of Fargo, I can vouch for it. It's really good. And
Nice.
a lot of actors and actresses that I was just like, I had no idea that you were in this. Like Billy Bob
Mm,
Thornton is like one of the main
yeah.
characters. And I was like,
Wow.
oh, okay, cool. Um, but well, yeah, well, sweet. Well, Mallory, where can people find you online? Where can they follow along and say hey?
Yeah, yeah. So Instagram, a couple of places. My handle is just my name, Mallory Rodgers, first and last name. And then also at the Couch Therapy with a couple underscores in between the words. That's the practice that I work at. We're based in DFW in Texas. And then our website as well. So, and that's just thecouchtherapy.org is also a good place. Post lots of blogs there. Um, can kind of keep up to date on whatever we got going on there.
Awesome. Well, sweet. Yeah, I'll have links for all that in the show notes for everyone, so y'all can go connect with Mallory. But yeah, well, sweet. Well, thank you for being on the show. I really enjoyed this conversation. It's very enlightening, and like, yeah, I don't know. I'm feeling like pumped up for the rest of the day after this conversation.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, and thanks for, making space. I know that's not the kind of a typical thing you talk about on this podcast, but I do think it's important. Obviously, I care about it, but
Yeah,
it's relevant to so many people. So thanks for making the space for it and for giving some time for me to come on here today.
absolutely. Thank you for being on the show. And Facebook, YouTube, thank you for joining in, and we will see y'all next time. Bye, y'all.